Welcome to Morning Coffee and Mimosas. I'm Christina.
And I'm Joe.
We are a father-daughter duo. We come here Sunday mornings, but you can come here anytime you please. We banter about life, about business, and we do it over coffee and mimosas.
So now instead of just good morning to you, we have Martina joining us.
Hello. We have a guest. Welcome, Martina.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Thanks. And hello, listeners. We are trying this video thing out again. So this is our second video, and we are joined by a very, very good friend of my dad's and a new friend of mine, Martina Davitkova from Canada.
You nailed the pronunciation.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's great. That was great.
Yes. Thanks so much for having me. And Joe, like Christina said, you become a good friend already. And I love that.
Well, thank you. And it's like perfect for our topic and for how that happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
listeners, let me give you a spoiler alert of what we're going to talk about today. We are going to talk about business relationships turned friendships, and really just more than that, the importance of relationships in life and in business and selling. I can certainly relate to that. And I think Martina is a perfect guest because Martina and my dad actually work together and have formed a really good relationship that I've been very impressed by. So Martina, well done as a fellow seller. I've been very impressed to hear the stories about how you represent, your brand at Coconut and really kind of drove value into with what my dad's credit union was purchasing. So anyway, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you mentioned, I work at Coconut Software. I'm an account executive there. I work mainly with folks located on the East Coast in the US, but I happen to live in Canada. We are a Canadian company. So this dialogue is happening cross countries here.
So we're international now. This podcast is international.
We have been international, which shocks me every single time I see some of the data. I think we've got listeners on just about every continent now.
But now we have an interview.
Right. That's correct. That is correct.
I love that. I've been with Coconut for just a short little while, but I've been in sales for about 3 years now. And I really love what I do. And I think that sometimes there's a stigma with sales that we're, pushy car salesmen and we have our own personal agendas and we're going to try to ring you out for every dime you've got. But I really love in the SaaS world getting to develop these professional relationships because you get to work with people for an extended period of time because things don't happen overnight in the business world and you really get to know people. And that's definitely my favorite part of the job.
It's so true. I mean, And I've been impressed, Dad, for watching you over your career. Oh, okay. Once in a while, you impress me. Not that often, but once in a great while. We don't have coffee or mimosas in hand right now for this. So I feel very naked and very sober. So this is a little bit different, but Anyway, I sidebar there to say, Dad, that you've impressed me over time because I've watched as you've maintained relationships, built relationships in all different aspects of life and how some of those things have weaved together over time to create opportunities. But never in an opportunistic way. And that probably,
thank you. That's
probably doesn't just make any sense.
No, it does. It does.
But you can kind of tell when somebody is after, they are angling for a relationship because they want something out of it versus, kind of that authenticity and just wanting to get to know a person. And anyway, how has that, I guess, Martina, come into play for you? Do you walk into a situation and say, okay, I just met Joe. He's my buyer. I've got to make him my best friend. Or was it kind of all right, this guy seemed approachable and and I mean, earmuffs, Dad, you could tell the truth here.
I think that
if there was a grand plan.
That's the hard part about sales, because of course, like, we're there to hopefully convince you or show you the value so that you want to become a customer of ours. So at the end of the day, we do have that personal agenda, and that's what our job is about. But I think that, when I first started, there was this idea in my head where I had to have the perfect pitch and say all the right things, and I had to be persuasive and convince people. And what I've quickly realized is that it's more so about just being genuine and being who you are and being honest to people and laying it all out for them. And if you are honest about who you are, they're more likely to trust you when you show them the things about your product or your service or whatever you might be selling to them. And I think that that's just the beginning of having more genuine interactions where, like, Joe knew I'm selling to him. There was no doubt about that. But at the end of the day, it became more so of taking an interest in the things outside of the software and the conversations that we're having as well. And I think that's what kind of contributed to us being on I have this phone number.
Yeah. And
he does give that out liberally, not to take anything away, but no. Just kidding. But more than that, I mean, he speaks so highly of you.
Yeah, but it's I like what you said about when you started there, and I felt this especially when I was younger. I mentioned this in an earlier podcast. When I was younger, this is just me anyway, I don't know how other people feel, but people that were older than me, I was very intimidated very easily, because I kept thinking, how could I possibly know what you know, if you were older than me? But that's not the case, because you're coming to me for a solution for what I have that you don't, potentially have, right?
Yeah.
But so I used to want to be very prepared, very buttoned up and very professional and very prepared. But I quickly learned, probably at my first mess up, if I was unprepared and laughed or something, how people relaxed. And
yes,
not that I would go into another meeting unprepared. I spent the rest of my life being unprepared. But I found that, when you're human, that's what connects people. And the whole idea is a connection, because I really feel, and then I'll let you talk, Martina, but if you make the connection with someone, then the product, we can focus on the product, and you're not in the way, or I'm not in the way, if that makes sense. But if I'm not connected and I feel that you really don't care and you're really not responsive,
mm-hmm.
then you're in the way of me evaluating the product, because I'm thinking, okay, so if this product is so good, and then I got to deal with her, or I have to deal with her.
Well, sometimes you purchase something despite the person who's selling it, right? Because the product is so good, it kind of sells itself. I just have, I'm laughing right now because we're talking so much about the connection and a good connection. And I don't know if you saw, but the screen has said connection lost twice.
That was because I have a wireless mouse and keyboard, and it's not here. And it.
Oh, is that what that was? Because I'm like, I think we've lost connection. I'm sorry. Brad might need to edit this out. If not, we'll just roll with it. But what I was saying is that sometimes you buy something despite the person that's selling it, because it's just something that you need, or it's something that they have a monopoly on, that you just make that choice. But what are, I guess, some of the things, Martina, as you go into, like, when you started your role 3 years ago, did you have the same approach, or like, have you learned, and I don't know, what were you doing before that? Like, were you in a different field, or?
Yeah, so my field has changed a little bit. At one point I was in cybersecurity, and as you can imagine, it's a very serious industry, and there's a lot on the line, and you're talking to chief technology officers or chief information officers, and the conversations have always been very straight to the point. And I found that it was really hard building relationships, especially in an industry where, you're changing things up because you want to stay ahead of the game, and there's not that much loyalty. So what I love coming to the financial industry space is that the banks and credit unions that we're talking to really do want to build a connection, and it takes that effort from both sides in order to make a meaningful connection. So what I appreciated when I had my first discussion with Joe, as I was going through our product and I showed him something, he was like, not to cut you off, I just don't want you spending a lot of time, but that's not useful to us. But like,
I
that's
remember
great feedback. It always throws off a salesperson, but like having that feedback, it's like, okay, well, he's paying attention. He's giving me feedback. And now I know where I can like steer the conversation versus me blabbing on for 15 minutes. So having engaged people on the other end makes all the difference. And as much as we can talk about why it's important to form relationships, people that don't want to form relationships with, you just can't force it.
That's very true, because not everybody's into it. Some people are just, just show me this. I really don't, I don't want to get to know you. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Don't want to joke, don't want to laugh. Just tell me about the product. And then you really do have to shift gears right away and do exactly as that person asked you to do.
I mean, I probably push the boundaries and we'll try to slide in a joke in there, see if I can.
I do the same thing.
Yeah. That was always me. I'd be like, okay, this person's a tough nut here. We're going to we'll have to delicately ease into it. Make them like me.
No, exactly.
You don't have to buy my product. Just you have to like me when we're done.
I'd be like, all right, I got to figure this person out. They're very dry. So some dry humor here.
Right.
And I think that also doing a little bit of due diligence on the people you're talking to, especially in a business manner. Like I'm not telling you to stalk anybody you're meeting in your day-to-day life, but in business, like getting an understanding of what they're about. For example, like I found that Joe was doing this podcast and I was like, of course I'm going to listen to it, like take an interest in what people are doing and something that they're proud of and celebrate those things. And that's a very easy way to, by just giving your time and your attention, to show other people that you care about the relationship.
Right.
You're 100% right, Martina. And I think when I've been working or coaching our team, a lot of times we talk about, because you probably, and if we were talking about sales, from 3 years ago when you got into this industry to now, it's changed quite a bit with just the technology that's out there and the way that people want to engage. But we talk so much of it has changed from how many calls have you made or how many times have you reached out to somebody to what are the deposits? How are you adding value? Because ultimately there's so many people that are doing, the same exact thing. So how do you stand out and how do you put yourself in a position where you've made deposits? We always call them. You keep making deposits and you invest your time. It doesn't need to be you could send 100 sales pitches over, but you sending him a note saying, hey, I listened to your podcast and that episode, whatever, referencing a story that showed I listened and I thought that was cool. I mean, he'll literally, you could go anywhere and he'll invent a product to buy from you at this point.
No, but I think that people that
didn't like that, Dad?
That was good. Yeah.
With their lives outside of work, as much as we all love our jobs and we can be super passionate about our job, it's also our extracurriculars and the relationships that we built outside of them. There's a reason why everybody loves to talk about their kids and their pets. We just love them, and those are great conversations for us. So just taking time to, ask, how is your son or daughter doing, or those little tiny moments of interaction where it doesn't have to be about something so generic like the weather, really helps to make sure that people know that you're thinking about them and that you remember the last thing that they said, that you were actively listening instead of going through the motions.
Right. That's good. Let me ask you this question. How do you, and I keep finding myself asking questions where I'm really asking for validation on something.
You need to extend your curiosity a bit.
Yeah, maybe I have to, but
he thinks he knows everything. He doesn't have anything left to learn anymore, huh?
Nothing. No, it's all. Well, I'm at capacity. There's nothing left up there. So. Doesn't mean I'm any good. It's just that it's capacity. Titles. Let me ask you this. How do you approach when you see a title, a fancy title or not fancy, I mean, high title versus, if you're approaching someone who is president or senior VP or something versus account executive or manager or something like that. What does title do to you? You don't know the person yet, but
Mhm.
you're going to be presenting. Is that a factor? Not a factor?
I think that it always makes people nervous. And when I started, especially, I was like, oh my God, the CEO of this company, I have to take a call with them and I have to talk to them. And you sometimes can start to feel little and you're like, I hope I can add value. And your mind can go to crazy places. What I've started doing is just relating it with more responsibility and busyness. So I know that when I'm speaking with somebody that is, VP up, whatever the ranks are, I keep in mind that they're busy and that I don't want to be taking up too much of their time, and I want to be to the point and direct. So I try to just place myself in their shoes and what would they appreciate given their role, and given that they're likely have a million things on their plate. And what I'm talking about is just 1% of what their brain is thinking about in terms of running their operation. So being mindful of that, I think, helps to resonate more with people that are in those higher positions.
And when you make that first contact, so let's say the CEO you are on the call, the Zoom call or whatever interaction it is, they pretty much then set the pace, right? Like you're ready to not waste their time.
Yeah.
But if you find out they don't appear to care how much time you're taking, you adjust, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's all about pivoting. And what you'll notice is when anybody has their boss on the line, they also follow their boss's lead. So if I follow their lead, then I'm following their boss's lead.
Right. Very good.
So when you think about that, though, I think there's another element of the relationship there, because I've made a lot of relationships, and being at my company for a long time now, there are people that were maybe lower level when I first met them, and then people advance, right? So there are people that their careers, they change and they grow. And I think that the worst thing that people can do sometimes when they are building relationships is discount people that don't have a title that impresses them. So you kind of took it, Martina, from a standpoint of, when I see that title, I get maybe a little bit more nervous and feel a little more pressure in communications. And I totally agree with that. But I also think that sometimes people discount a title that they don't think can serve them. And that can be the Achilles heel in a relationship, in an opportunity to close business, because sometimes those people are the ones that are weighing in, and a critical point of evaluation for somebody who's ultimately making the decision. Sometimes they end up advancing or things change. I mean, how quickly things change at organizations now. The person that you could be counting out in the beginning could end up being the person that's sitting in that seat of the title that now gives you the fire in your belly to say, oh, crap.
Right.
So I don't know. I just think that's something that's important too, because so often I think salespeople will look at, and it's not just salespeople, just people in general, right? They put on their best for somebody that they think can get them. That it goes back to that opportunistic quality, which I really don't love, where somebody acts differently or, brings their best because of who you are and what you can do for them, versus kind of like you mentioned, that authenticity to just be who you are and try and, do the right thing and solve problems.
And I think that's something that can help you deepen relationships too, that I've been mindful to do. When you're talking to somebody and then their boss joins and you've had a great experience working with them, tell their boss on that same call that you've enjoyed working with that coworker so much, or something great that they did. And it just goes a long way, because you're giving a genuine compliment. You're giving it at a time that matters and making sure that person gets the recognition that they deserve. And then you've got somebody that wants to work with you because you made them feel good. And now their boss knows the hard work that they're putting in. So I think that, especially in the business world, it's not like a clear line of progression of hierarchy. And it all just gets so interwoven across the organization that, you're 100% right. Every single relationship matters.
Yeah, and it always comes back to being a genuine person, which I think you started out right off to the bat as a genuine person. So when I say that, what I mean is, if you're genuine and you're sincere, then you're not different with somebody based on their title. The way I look at it, a fancy title might actually make me a little bit more nervous, perhaps, but I need to be the same person with that
Yeah.
individual as I would be if someone had no title on their name and maybe they were not significantly important, let's say, to the organization.
Mm-hmm.
But who cares? Just be normal, because that person who, you're not doing it for this reason because you're genuine, but the person who might appear to be insignificant to the situation, as you said, Christina, could be the one who the president calls and says, "So what do you think?"
Yeah.
you know, and they go, "Yeah, I don't know. I didn't like her, or I didn't like him, or whatever. Yeah, okay, we'll go elsewhere." And you would never know that. You would, in 1,000 years, not know that. But treating everybody with respect all the way down the line is just so important.
Yeah.
You
I'm
should
going
do
to
that
start.
with me once in
I
a
was
while.
going to say, maybe I'll start thinking about the way I talk to you, Dad. I
saw
apologize.
that pregnant pause was she was like, "Yeah, I shouldn't treat you so bad."
Especially because, this is a very, you do present a lot of opportunity for me. So I really should be treating you with the respect you deserve.
Really?
I don't know, in life. You gave me life. I mean,
that's true.
maybe you and Mom, maybe the greatest opportunity I've ever had.
See, now Martina's sitting here going, "Look, these two are talking here. What am I doing here? I'm supposed to be interviewing you."
So just another question, Martina, because I'm thinking about when you started in sales 3 years ago. This is a pretty wild time to have gotten on on the sales train. Is that a train? I don't know. But you've kind of come into things at a pivotal time. And as you've been trying to build relationships, what does this look like in the world today, where I'm guessing that the beginning of the relationship that you and my dad formed was like this, virtual in nature.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some ways, and I think you talked about some of them, but the difference between that face-to-face environment and, in personal life, right? When you're building relationships that way, how do you manage to kind of build that same level of rapport and trust that you did in a virtual setting? Do you feel like there's a need for face-to-face, or do you feel like you accomplish just as much in a virtual environment?
That's interesting. And I think that we could debate this for days, just because there's been a lot of great things to happen out of not being able to travel, and we're all adapting and using Zoom. At the same time, there's also Zoom fatigue. And if we're on virtual meetings all day long, it can be really easy to get burned out and maybe not be your best self and put it your all at the end of a day. But also it helps you connect with I don't know if I would have traveled to New Jersey and met with Joe. I don't know if you get the same reach without technology. So I think that it's a give and take. But I do think that because of all the technology use, sometimes the people that we're talking to, they have so much going on, and it's so hard to get their attention. They have their phone next to them. You can't read their body language. Maybe their video is turned off and you don't get that eye contact, facial expressions. So I think just keeping your video on in meetings just really goes a long way to bring the personal aspect and having people see that it's you that they're talking to, and making light of the situation that we are all working from home. So, me and Joe were talking earlier about your dog starting to bark at the worst time, or getting into the room crying. That's just another opportunity to show that you're a real person and show them the personal side of you, not just how we portray ourselves in a professional way, because we're all humans and we're inside of our house doing meetings through our house. So I don't know if I answered your question, because I'm on the fence, but I think that there's just little things that we can do to bring the human interaction, maybe doing a coffee meeting where you both have your cup of coffee so it can feel like a coffee date.
Yeah.
Right. That's true.
I think we did an episode very early on where we kind of were breaking some of that down, like how you can still connect in a virtual way. And you're so right. Like, I think a lot of people used 2020 and the fact that you couldn't get in front of people as a crutch to say, like, this is why, I need to get in front of them so that I could advance something forward. And sometimes maybe that's true with certain people, but I would have to say, like, just looking at, the relationship that you guys have built, and I look at so much of what's developed and, all that we've accomplished over the course of the last 2 years when face-to-face interaction was at a major premium and still is, right? You're not really doing that unless it's absolutely necessary. So I think, I don't know. I think maybe the debate is that, it's a happy balance, but I think, you can develop that track record and trust and reliability without actually maybe like breaking bread together and being face to face.
I like that, breaking bread.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, that's his.
Yeah. No, I think it's, the pandemic's been horrible, obviously, for a lot of people, but personally, being a techie, because I'm a techie, I know I'm old, and but I'm definitely, I have always been a techie, and I embrace, like, iOS 15 came out on Monday. I literally kept hitting refresh till it came, and then downloaded
Nerd
it.
alert.
Yeah, I'm a complete nerd. So it has forced technology down people's throats that have avoided it. And when I say technology, yes, we all eventually get there.
Yeah.
But people are using Zoom and computers and logging on to digital banking now, and all of this remote stuff that I think it forced a critical mass of people forward in technology. So saying that, your job, Martina, I think, and yours, Christina, has been enhanced because you now have the ability to see and potentially make, if every, let's say, presentation was an hour, you could do 8 presentations a day, 7 a day. It would probably burn you out and you'd have a massive
That's why
headache.
we have more wrinkles and
yes, but
grays and exhaustion.
no, don't talk about gray. I have no hair and gray, so that's but
it's true though. I mean, the amount that the amount you can pack in a day now is bananas. It's like,
right, where if you, Martina, were traveling, you would be going from where you live to maybe 30 minutes away, then maybe a 2-hour drive, and then whatever, or planning a trip to New Jersey and then coming, all of that time that is traveling and not producing new business.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone accepted the fact that that's how we have to do it. So I think, and more people are used to it. So I believe truly that when this is over, whenever it is, year 2, 3, whatever,
easy there.
There'll be a nice hybrid of Zoom meetings, phone calls, and in person that makes sense.
Yeah.
And is appropriate. So
I think it's been interesting how various businesses have been adopting that. Businesses where you traditionally didn't see video meetings are now accepting that as a good way to communicate with their customers and reach them, because you don't have to leave the house, and during a pandemic that's scary for some people, but it's also that added benefit of, say, I'm not nearby a location where I need to go physically, being able to have the same conversation over video has helped a lot of businesses. And I think that there's some people who are hesitant to jump on board because they're thinking, as soon as the pandemic's over, everything's going back to normal. But I don't think that's the case. I think that we've discovered a new way of doing things, and it's here to stay. We're just going to end up diving deeper into the realm of technology to help us with these day-to-day interactions. So at the same time, it's important that we stay mindful to not let the technology take over and still have those like real connections and conversations.
Right.
Yeah. Don't be a robot. Use the technology to kind of amplify who you are and your, and what you bring to the table, but let's not be robots.
And at the end of the day, we're discussing professional relationships. the way you are, your persona, your personality, that effectively comes through on a video, it comes through on a phone call, and it comes through in person.
I don't
So
know if you can tell, but I'm blushing.
I'm glad we're on YouTube now.
Yeah. This is recorded with video.
That's right. But it's very, very true, because if you're genuine, it comes through. If you're fake, it comes through. So, I don't know. I think it's just that the whole aspect of being real and developing that professional relationship is what.
So if
is
we were
important.
to we can workshop this a little bit, but Martina, Dad, if we were to give our listeners advice, because sometimes relationships don't come natural to everybody. And I think you've said some things that are good, right? Like, be curious about the person that you're going to meet. And this goes for, we are talking about sales right now, because that's what, the role that myself, Martina, and my dad spent a lot of time in, and now as a buyer. But I think this goes for personal life too. Be curious about people, ask questions, spend some time trying to understand what makes them tick. But Martina, if we were to workshop this and break it down and want to share with our listeners some ways that you make building relationships a deliberate part of your week, because sometimes, you get busy and you could forget to do some of those things that really help. So how do you kind of build that into, do you have a cadence you follow? You found the podcast, and I think it was really after they already signed on with Coconut, right?
Yeah.
So what is your approach to continuing to nurture the relationship, and, how do you allocate your time to new business and all of that?
Yeah, I think that it's all about striking a good balance. And I don't know if I'm the expert in that, but little things that help, like you said at the start, just being kind in the first place. And when you get the cues that somebody else is willing to build a relationship with you, really nurture that and make that a priority. Using your technology like LinkedIn, or if they're active on, say, Twitter, anything like that, to understand what this person's about and what they care about, and bringing those meaningful topics to a conversation where, you can contribute value, and, that there'd be something that they're interested in talking about, really goes a long way. And then with Joe, what I wanted to make an effort to do was, after that he had moved into our customer success team, is make sure that I pop in and say hi and get us feedback and see how things are going. Yes, the sale is over, but that doesn't mean that we're never going to talk again. And that's not what I want. So if you genuinely want to have that relationship, I think that helps. And it makes it so that it's not a cadence and a part of your job. Rather, it's, okay, this is a person that I care about, so let me see how they're doing. And I think that if we look at our personal relationships outside of work, that's what really holds on to them and keeps them in our lives, is just caring for the other person. So you're not going to care about every single person you meet in your business relationships, but having that general curiosity about how they're doing and checking in, I think that really, really goes a long way. And it's just something so simple that people can do.
That's very true. And that checking in not only is very pleasant and appreciated, but if there was potentially an issue, wouldn't you want, in other words, rather than saying, oh my God, he's going to complain, if there was an issue, you want to know about it, fix it, bring it back to, your technical team, or bring it to marketing, or whatever you have to do. And that advances your business. If you never heard about a complaint, or if you're, or on the opposite side, if something was really great, maybe you want to trumpet that, So that's a good point.
When we resynced after you were with the customer success team, I was like, do you have feedback for me? Because you went through the sales process with me. Is there something that I said that I promised that wasn't delivered, or any expectations that I set that were unrealistic? Because that insight is so valuable for us, having gone through the process. And you're right, it helps me be better at my job and be more transparent and fair with the other people that I'm talking to. So going back and getting that feedback is it also feels really good to be heard when you do have feedback and you
Mm-hmm.
want something to be changed or something wasn't promised. But I think it helps both ways.
That's great. That's great.
It's really good.
You know what? Can I tell a little story or no?
You sure can.
I
I
gotta
suppose.
ask
Thanks for
permission
checking.
you're
Thanks for
welcome.
checking.
Years ago, when I was a management consultant, and years ago, my own business,
Mm-hmm.
and I was hired by a software company. They did medical software, not medical billing. They did when you go into the doctor, and then the doctor opens a laptop and has all your records, all that stuff.
That's called electronic medical records.
Okay. Thank you.
There you go.
Clarification.
As you were.
Yes. So I was hired. This is interesting. I was hired to work with the support department because they were getting a lot of they had a lot of problems and complaints and all this other kind of stuff. So, and the reason this is interesting is, so I go into, now I'm hired as a consultant, and the management told me the problem is in the support area. I get into the support area and I'm doing my analysis, and I find out that what the problem was the sales team was promising the world to the customers. And when they bought the software, the customer, the office manager in a doctor's office would call up and say, yeah, so the connection to blah, 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 when does that get installed? We don't do that. What do you mean you don't do that? Oh, that's a $10,000. We can custom program that, but that's $10,000. Well, what do you mean it's $10,000? I bought.
Yeah.
So my point was, the entire process was, problem was the sales team doing anything that they had to do disingenuously to close the deal. And then they never, ever reached back out to a customer. And
because they were scared to, probably.
They were scared. And the sales team's biggest problem was getting references. When a new person said, do you have any references? Yeah. They used to scour to try to find a reference. So again, I guess what I'm saying is it's everybody's together, but you when you said, the promises you made, were they met? You would never intentionally lie, but maybe perhaps this was listed as a feature and you find out, well, yeah, it works, but not really well, or something like that. You would want to know that.
Yes, exactly. And I think that with technology these days and reviews on every,
oh my God,
Google reviews, YouTube reviews, oh my God, there's more places where you can review stuff than ever before. I think that it's more important than ever just to be so honest and to provide that really great customer experience, because now people are going to look that up and they're going to see. So you can't get away with making promises anymore. You can't get away with lying about what your product can or can't do, or selling people something that's actually not great or doesn't do what it was promised to do, because I think that's why people really appreciate references and feedback and reviews, and it kind of drives people's buying these days, just hearing from somebody else, because they accept that as truth over somebody who is in sales and it's part of their job.
You're so right. There's so much information out there. And I think that's why sales has changed so much, because people are going elsewhere to get information before they want to talk to a salesperson, because of that kind of distrust that, okay, well, you're going to tell me what you think I want to hear. I want to hear what's real, So I think that's, it's kind of a myth. I think professional sales is a little bit different, especially when you've got good people that approach it from a place like you do, Martina. So it's very nice to get to talk to you, because I think there's a lot of people that probably give the sales profession a bad name. But man, there are a lot of really, really solid sellers that are just trying to problem solve. And I think if, I don't know, if that was publicized more.
I like that, because that's what you're doing. You're solving a problem. We have this problem, and you have a solution. And I want to make, as we close a little bit, and Martina, you don't have to. If you have more brilliance, we want to hear it. So I just want to say one thing, kind of wrapping up about the profession, because this whole thing is about professional relationships, right? When you make these relationships that are deeper, and again, I'm just saying deeper than it was just a perfunctory sales call or you did a presentation or whatever, but you kind of connect with people.
Mm-hmm.
People remember what they feel, not what they learned or know. Right. So when you make someone feel good,
Mm-hmm.
they remember you. And people, as I'm going to link it to what Christina said about people moving in positions and taking new positions, you will never know what
Mm-hmm.
impact you've had on a person's and how they felt. Could be 3 years from now and you get a call from someone. Hey, Martina, I was at this company and I'm now at this company. We want to bring you in. Can you follow?
For sure.
That's the stickiness of relationships. And I think if there's a little nugget to link professional relationship, it's how did you make people feel at the end of the day? Did they feel good because they had a conversation with you, that they had a presentation with you, that you responded to them, how you responded? And that's how I felt even through the implementation, even the implementation team made you feel good and you smiled. You looked forward to the meetings,
Yeah.
That's gold.
Yeah. And I think having that mentality across the company, that customer experience and making your customers feel really good. Like we all know that I think the stat is it costs 5 times more to gain a new customer than to keep one.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have a whole company that's kind of has the vibe and everybody is putting the customer first, it just goes such a long way. And honestly, it makes me like my job more and I want to work more and work harder.
Exactly. You're happier all the way around. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like when I talk to you, when I talk to other prospects, I'm like, not like, oh my God, I have to tell them this thing and I know it's not true. Or like, oh my God, there's actually somebody better and I'm promising something that's not true. It's like, no, it's that good feeling and it makes you more confident going into those discussions and you can be more honest.
It's a really good point. So with that, what does Coconut do? Because we spent a whole lot of time talking about, relationships, but what does your company do? Because it does, I've heard great things. Sounds like a great company and, may as well give you guys a little plug
and a great
here.
Product,
and a great product. So tell us a little bit about Coconut.
Yeah, just really quickly, we Coconut Software focuses on appointment and lobby solutions. We do a little bit more in that and just helping members and customers find the appropriate routes of engagements with like a credit union or a bank, and making sure that like as we adopt more technology and we're using video meetings and self-serve option, just making sure that we really connect members and credit unions and amplify that relationship because sometimes it's hard. Like people used to just walk in to a bank and talk to a teller or an advisor, but now they're helping themselves more. So how can we make sure that they're connecting in the right ways and having that connection with the credit union or bank?
Thanks, Martina.
It's great. You have anything you want to add to anything?
I hope I get to come back on the podcast.
We would love to have you back.
Well, that was nice. That was nice to say at the end. Okay, that was very nice. Yes, we will have you back.
I love that.
And Martina, if you want anybody to connect with you, where can they find you?
Oh man, LinkedIn, or my email that you probably can't spell my last name. So
we'll put it in the show notes. Martina Davitkova
at Coconut Software.
At Coconut Software. Awesome.
Yeah. Well, we will put that in the in the notes.
Oh, well, I really appreciate that, guys. But I'm just so thrilled that, that we met and post implementation and post sale that, we're still here and we're talking and we're keeping in touch. And I know I've gotten just so much value from this relationship already. And now look, I'm on somebody's podcast. Like this is my first.
There you go.
Well, thanks for listening to the podcast. It's been exciting to hear your feedback over time. And I'm super excited to finally get to meet you as well. I heard so many good things from my dad for quite some time. So nicely done.
I feel like I know you because I've heard your voice for so long now. And it's so different because, I've heard you, but you've just heard from Joe things about me.
No, it's all coming full circle and it's super exciting. So anyway, thank you so much for being a guest. Thanks for sharing your perspective. I love to talk to other people in other industries and sales and talk shop a little bit. So listeners, thanks for bearing with us if you guys don't care about sales. But I think there's a lot that you could take away from this episode about relationships, whether it's business or some other area of your life. So yeah, thanks again for sharing. Listeners, if you liked what you heard, please, please, please leave us a review and a 5-star rating if that's how you feel. If you don't, then
and a comment and share with your friends. Share with your friends.
Yep. Yeah. So anyway, we hope to see you. We hope to see you all next week.
That's right. Stay there. We're gonna Martina, we're gonna make you listen to the whole.
Oh yeah, our little sign off.
That's right. All right. Wherever you are, whatever your story, thanks for spending time with us this morning. Now, go and make a difference in your world.
Then it's very hard to not bop around to this, especially now on camera. You can't see this when you're just listening to the podcast, but listeners, if you're not watching, we tend to I don't know, what would you call
cute.
this?
I like it.
Like a wave. Bye, everyone.